Hello, and welcome. Anime episodes. I love talking about them, and I've made some videos on this channel already talking about some of my favorite episodes from various anime. You might know me as the 100 Girlfriends guy, the anime elf guy, the isekai guy, but I'd also like to be known as the anime episode guy too. Heck, I've already ranked every episode of Attack on Titan and Re:Zero, seasons 1 and 2, so I figured it would be fun if I gave my list of which episodes of anime from this previous year that I liked the most, which is why you should join me as I continue my journey to discover the perfect anime. Now, any episode that premiered in 2024 is eligible for this list, including from any anime that I excluded from the best anime of 2024 video. As long as it came out last year, it's eligible, and if I actually watched it, so anything that was in my tier list. Therefore, there won't be any Bleach or One Piece. However, I do want to shout out One Piece fan letter, since that was excellent. The only restrictions I will give is that I'm only doing one episode per series, because otherwise I just have like 4 anime on this list tops, and I'm not going to include a Re:Zero, simply because I'm going to rank all of season 3 in the future, and come on, it's too easy to choose Re:Zero. It's too good for this list. Also, only really the top 5 are in any particular order. The first set I'm going to cover are all about on equal terms with one another, so don't read too into the ordering here. And by the way, I am going to spoil the hell out of every anime I cover here, so if you want to avoid spoilers, please utilize the chapter selections for this video and skip to the next one. But before I begin, there are several great anime episodes that are going to be honorable mentions, and these are...
Yae Amagami. I changed her life.
By discarding one of my cards and placing it into storage, I can heal myself and Pearl by 3 life points each. And that's my move!
Every single year on this day, come and pour out the booze that end users selling on their graves. And every time they release a new one as well, till the day you die.
Sky clear!
Crescent Vorpal!
仲直りのチュー
A knight who defends an empty throne.
Starting off with a bang with what I consider the best fight from Solo Leveling Season 1, Sung Jinwoo vs. Knight Commander Egress the Blood Red from Episode 11, A Knight Who Defends an Empty Throne. This fight is a culmination of everything great about Solo Leveling. It's close, gritty, and an all-around spectacle. Every hit that lands is felt, which is ramped up when both fighters discard their weapons and handle business handily. Up to this point, Sung Jinwoo's fights have never fully gone his way without any major struggle. He's still leveling to get to where he wants to go, and perhaps he entered this dungeon too early, but he'll never know as it's exclusively for him. Egress may be guarding an empty throne, but it's up to Jinwoo to fill it, as a worthy opponent. And through all the bloodshed, he's able to take down a seemingly impossible foe by just going all out. This right here is one of the hypest moments, maybe the hypest moment from anime all year for me. And it was here that I realized in full that Solo Leveling is in good hands with A1 Pictures. I know a lot of people were worried if the anime would be able to stack up to the manhwa before it started, but with this episode, the rest of the season, and season 2 now, I highly doubt any of us are disappointed. Sometimes in anime, all you really want to watch is the indomitable human spirit in action.
What I yearn to have at my side is a lone sword.
The last episode may have been the best fight of the year, but Will Seraford vs. Julius Reinberg in episode 7 of Wistoria, 12 Secret Ice Magics El Glace Frase might just be my favorite. Because while an incredible fight between a human and a silent beast is exhilarating, here you just want to see Julius get his shit kicked in, and he has every right to believe he'll win this fight. After all, he's an extremely talented mage and Will can't even use magic. He's a minnow fighting a shark. But unfortunately for Julius, they're fighting in familiar waters for Will. Julius's trump card is the Ars Weiss spell, one that allows him to clone himself multiple times and attack from every angle. But I just love how Will humbles him. The spell is a cheap imitation of what its creator, Will's childhood friend Elfaria, was able to do at just age 2. Julius could have won this fight if he didn't make the grave mistake of succumbing to his own hubris and insulting the greatest driving force of Will, the desire to stand side by side with Elfaria. And out of all the anime tropes out there, by far my favorite is when the opening plays during the episode. It is without a doubt the hypest thing you can ever do. And when I first watched this episode, I got out of my seat cheering for Will. Wistoria isn't the deepest anime you'll ever watch. It doesn't need to be. Sometimes you just want to see the underdog win. And Will earns this win, single-handedly defeating Julius with his own skills and talent despite Julius not even recognizing it. Until now. 2024 had some really satisfying punches, but this one probably takes the cake for me, as a snobby bully like Julius deserved what was coming to him. It's well animated, extremely satisfying, and oh yeah, Will doesn't even win the competition, but this was never about that. Will accomplished what he needed to. The victory over his rival. Also, I covered this in the solo leveling episode first because they're pretty much just straight action rides. And my name is Action First after all. So, up next is... 2.5 Dimensional Seduction is such an underrated anime, and I'm glad to see how many of you agreed with its ranking on my year-end list. It's one of those shows that gets better and better the more you allow it to grow. And the best example of this is episode 21, The Protagonist's Story. Up to this point, we've been steadily building the core cosplay group with the most recent addition of Arya, who we've learned got into cosplay because of her dad being a mangaka. One who created a story that never sold and never had any fans other than his daughter and one other person. But some time ago, Arya's parents divorced. Her father went his own way to continue making manga, and she's been raised by her mother since. Their last meeting didn't go well, and ever since she's still honored her father's work through cosplay and her hairpin. She wasn't even sure if he was alive or not for all of this time. But one day at work he catches a glimpse of a group of Lilial cosplayers at Comiket, and he makes his way to the convention thinking that one of the cosplayers looks like his daughter. But before he can meet her, he's confronted, in order to stall for time, by the only fan he ever had. Okumura, the main character of the story, but not the protagonist of this episode. Yoichi has never had much confidence in himself. He's only been propped up by the people around him, namely his wife and daughter, and when his original series was selling poorly, he succumbed to depression, refusing to accept the kindness of the only fan he ever had for that series. But now that same fan is confronting him head-on, telling him he shouldn't ever denounce his work. Whether he's a failure or not isn't his own decision to make. As far as Okumura is concerned, nothing Yuichi's ever made has been a failure. He loved Valkyrie Battle and loves Yuichi's current work, the side story for Lilial, and he wants to continue being a fan, even when no one else will. But this isn't the case, as Arya appears cosplaying as Melia, the protagonist of Valkyrie Battle, proving she was the biggest fan he ever had. This is an episode where a man rediscovers his determination and passion for the work that he's committed his life to, and reunites with his daughter after 10 long years. Arya has a resolve to cosplay, to do what she loves, and is able to share that with her father after all this time, thus giving him the resolve to continue the work that he was previously considering ending. 2.5 Dimensional Seduction has a great knack for hitting you hard when you least expect it. Much like with the end of this episode when Arya tells her father that when he makes his next manga, her mother wants to be the first one to read it.
You defended my mural, so thank you. That's all I wanted to say. I think.
Have you ever considered that your dreams aren't worth it, and that it's pointless to have aspirations? That's something that can easily be felt by anyone, as shown in the titular first episode of Jellyfish Can't Swim in the Night. Mahiru used to be an aspiring artist and Kano used to be an up-and-coming idol. Both have diverged from this path in life, with Mahiru due to personal choice and Kano having that role stripped from her. Despite how talented of an artist Mahiru is, she didn't feel that it was necessary in order to live a normal life. And even though Kano was extremely talented, her sudden outburst towards a bandmate caused her to be shamed by the public at large. But she's kept going, under a new persona, Jelly, who's inspired by Mahiru's art. As she shows Mahiru after they first meet, she's pulling through and still pursuing her dreams despite the adversity that she's faced. Come Halloween, the very same Jellyfish mural that Mahiru painted has been defaced by a random idol promoting herself, and Kano does what she knows best. Taking her passion in her own hands by performing a song straight to Mahiru, as if to say, I'm doing this because of you. Jellyfish Can't Swim in the Night does have its problems, I'm willing to admit that. But overall, I still do think it's a very high quality show. Consider it my number 13th spot for my best anime of 2024. If it had a few more episodes to flesh itself out, it likely would have made the list proper. But the first episode shows exactly why a story like this can hit so hard. Mahiru's struggles with doubt are relatable to just about all of us. If you're going to put something out there, someone's going to be hard on it, and others are simply going to ignore it. But just like in the last episode, there's still those out there who will root for you. If you put your heart into it, if you show what you're really capable of, someone out there should be able to hear you.
It was never my intention to get in the way of their relationship. I wonder if Mitsuki and I can even still be friends after what happened.
How many rom-com anime are out there where the main character chooses a love interest and it's not that one? You know which one, the one who's set up so she could be rejected. Conflict is the root of all storytelling, but the losing girls deserve love too. Even if they can't get it now, the best thing they can get is some closure, which we rarely ever get to see. And hey, that's realistic. How many people out there have been rejected? Probably everyone. Even those able to find their happy ending likely went through some heartbreak along the way. And Makeine does a fantastic job displaying this, especially with episode 7, The Other Side of a Happy Ending. That's as direct of a title as you can get, because poor Lemon, she's been set up for failure ever since the beginning of the series. We know her childhood friend love interest is oblivious when he says that he's got a girlfriend in episode 2. So all this time up to her sudden confession in the previous episode, which broke my heart by the way, she's been holding on to these feelings for so long. But now she's in a position where she'll never be able to tell him how she feels. Chihiya's caught up to this and even feels bad about getting to Mitsuki before Lemon can, outright telling others she's prepared to step aside if Mitsuki wants Lemon instead. But is that going to solve anything? If that would happen, Lemon would always feel deep down that she broke up a happy couple, and this isn't any way to have a successful romantic relationship. Neither is GPS tracking your boyfriend, but I think Chihiya's learned that now. What I love so much about this episode is we don't really get to see this kind of closure presented in anything, whether it be movies, anime, TV shows, any of them. It's so rare to see. But it's so crucial to life if you want to remain on good terms with everyone involved. Lemon's been pushing herself to the breaking point ever since Mitsuki and Chihiya started dating, but through having a one-on-one with Mitsuki, she learns that he had feelings for her too. Things just didn't work out, and it sucks. But it's real, it's so true that this happens. I know that these two never actually dated, but this closure is therapeutic for the both of them. Especially that this is a situation in which nobody was in the wrong. Nobody's at fault, nobody's a bad person, nobody's a villain. And I love it when stories are able to present such a realistic and mature outlook on romance, or the lack of it. Lemon will always have feelings for Mitsuki, and the same could be said about him. But after finally being able to discuss it, they're ready to move on with their lives. Unfortunately, she is able to continue being friends with Mitsuki, Chihaya, and Nukamizu, who was never involved with this love triangle, but he did the right thing. He stood alongside a friend in need and heard them out, never telling her how to act or what to do. He's just been there for her, even when he isn't. Makeine is an incredible show that presents such mature perspectives on what it's like to fall in love and be rejected. But Lemon deserves nothing but happiness, and I have no doubt that she'll find that happiness one day.
You a friend of Aya or something?
Fame. It's what many of us desire. Or perhaps not just fame, but success itself. After all, doesn't it make sense to live a life worth living, up to the best of your abilities? But what if your life is simply too long for most others? How would an immortal be able to connect with others who will at some point pass away and leave behind nothing but their memories? And what if one day that opportunity to say goodbye has already passed? In episode 4 of Mayonaka Punch, the star of the next video is Fu, the vampire, is shown to have a real talent for singing. And as we explore her past, we see that others felt the same way, with her friend Aya suggesting that the two of them combine their efforts and go pro. Fu's someone who deals with a lot of anxiety, and on top of that, keeps her secret that she's a vampire away from others, including Aya. On the day that they're set to take the stage, she panics, unable to perform out in the sun, and suddenly leaves Aya for the last time. Years have passed since then, and Fu's roommates, the vampire YouTubers themselves who want Fu to sing for their channel, discover that Aya was last known to have performed at a club in New York City. Hoping to track her down and make up for the lost time, she returns with news of Aya's passing, having left behind her guitar one day for Fu to take with her. But that's not the only thing she left behind. In the video hidden within the guitar case, Aya talks directly to Fu. She never figured out why Fu suddenly left. But no matter what, Aya had fun with her, and she knows Fu did too. She just wants Fu to be out there somewhere, still having fun and still singing. Now, most of us aren't immortal vampires, but the feeling of being unable to say goodbye to someone is all too real. Sometimes we distance ourselves from others to no fault of the other person, just for whichever reason that may be, and we may never be able to meet them once again before it's too late. But for Fu, she decides to honor not just Aya, but herself, as she sings for the channel and lives a life that both her and Aya can be proud of.
Incredible, Mistress Frieren. So this is the height of magic.
Yeah, I wasn't done talking about anime that utterly blew me away with their animation quality. And it feels a bit awkward saying my favorite Frieren episode of 2024 was the one with the most amount of action in it, since that isn't really the main focus of the series. I've said it before, and I'm not the only one to do so, but Frieren's greatest strength and focus is on the journey, not the destination. But squaring up is this episode's destination. As in episode 26 of Frieren, the height of magic, the greatest enemy you could ever face is shown to be none other than yourself. Frieren vs. Frieren might just be the best animated fight of the year, even disregarding what I said about the other two. And it honestly feels weird saying that about a full-on magic battle, because I can't be the only one who thinks that magic often feels underwhelming in anime. When I think of my favorite anime fights, they're almost all hand-to-hand or with weapons. Rarely does a magic fight actually come off like a duel between two powerful beings. Most of the time when people fight with magic, they just stand there or chant incantations. Sure, if you were a mage, you'd probably just stand as still as needed. The main focus should be on winning rather than looking cool, unless you're Makeine. But this is what I want to see in a magic fight. And I'd also like to mention that I was very close to putting episode 21 on this list, but I went with this one instead, mostly due to Frieren up to this point having just used Zultrak more often than anything else, which hey, it works, most mages use it, but we've seen glimpses of just how powerful an immortal mage really can be. We know she's capable of going all out, and what does she do to prove this? Why? An utter feast for the eyes. Now, as cool as Frieren is, she's not the only part of this episode. Just about everybody still in the dungeon gets to be part of the action too, as the Spiegel proves to be a near impossible challenge. Any fight against herself is just going to end in a stalemate. However, if the opponent lacks any sense of humanity, they're going to have the edge. There's no need to hold back after all. So why hold back? Splitting the remaining mages to take care of the others' counterparts is an utterly genius way to go about it. And I gotta give this episode props for giving all the backstory needed to show how cold and merciless Ubel is. Man, this terrified and awakened me. It's impossible to expect every magic battle to be this spectacular, but when everything comes together, it's the most impressive display of dominance you'll see. Not just from Frieren herself, but from Fern, since after all, the only one who could ever kill an immortal elf would be a human. She couldn't have done it without her, and the two managed to survive and move on to the next test. The Mimic Test. Frieren fails.
Care to join me for a few games?
How could I possibly decline such a request? Especially when it's from my lovely daughter.
Have you ever had the wrong impression of someone, only to come find out that everything you thought you knew was wrong? Well, in episode 23 of the Apothecary Diaries, Balsam and Wood Sorrel, I felt that way about Lacan. This whole time we've been set up to believe that he's an utter scumbag who fawns over his own daughter, but abandoned her and her syphilis-ridden mother. However, after playing a bit of Yu-Gi-Oh! It's called Zhangqi, by the way. And getting a bit too drunk, we're able to learn his side of the story, with what really happened. Lacan was born with prosopagnosia, a condition in which you're unable to properly recognize faces. In order to adjust to this, he's imagined everyone he knows with that of a Zhangqi piece as their face. There's only one person who he actually manages to remember the face of, Feng Sheng, a well-renowned courtesan of the Verdigris house, and he continues to see her when he can every 3 months, playing board games, gradually growing closer each time until the two fall for each other and have sex. However, reality can be often cruel, and due to family circumstances, he's forced to leave and study abroad, being unable to return for 3 whole years. During that time, Feng Sheng was pregnant with Lacan's daughter, and a courtesan becoming pregnant drastically tanks her value in the eyes of the public. She was forced to take any client she could, thereby leading to her eventual decay. Lacan was dealt the worst hand in life, not only through his impairment, but being unable to stay with the one he loved. And without being able to communicate, Feng Sheng had no other choice but to go down her route. It's a story of brutal circumstances that could have been prevented if they were able to just see one another more often, or during the time that Lacan was away. Fortunately, in the next episode, he does return to her and finally buys her from the Verdigris house, after all this time, as she still is the same beautiful woman he fell in love with all those years ago. In 1965, researcher Bruce Tuckman created the Tuckman Stages of Group Development, which states that a successful group goes through the following stages in order: forming, storming, norming, and performing. And the reason I bring this up is because the rock band Toganashi Togiari is constantly in a state of storming, as shown best in episode 8 of Girls Band Cry, If You Were to Cry. I swear, these girls never seem to get along when you'd expect them to. Their most recent show was pretty successful and their band is on the rise. However, lead singer Nina Isuri took to the stage after their performance, declaring to the public that she'll be dropping out of school in order to make music full time. This wasn't the time to do so, which is exactly why Nina did this. She's the kind of person to go out on her own terms and let the entire world know. But to a vet of the stage like Momoko Kawaragi, her bandmate, all of this is going to come back and bite Nina sooner or later. The two of them have clashed in the past, and now tensions are at an all-time high, especially since shortly before they were about to perform, Momoko dropped her own bombshell that she would be quitting the band. In their frustration, the two go to a concert of their rivals, the band Diamond Dust, the same band Momoko helped form, the same band that she had already left. At this point in their lives, Momoko doesn't want Nina falling down the same path that she's been, chewed up and spit out by what the public at large wants and expects out of a band. And really, Momoko's only stayed with the band so far since Nina reminded her of her younger, more carefree self. But she isn't taking Nina's feelings into consideration. Nina loves music and she loves Diamond Dust. The Diamond Dust that Momoko was a part of. She's already been in a situation where she was handed the easy way out, to forsake her feelings and move on with life, since after all, everyone would have been alright if that's the path she took. But instead, in the past, Nina didn't accept this. She would have never forgiven herself if she just did what others wanted and expected her to. Nina may have reminded Momoko of herself, but there's no one in the world that Nina looks up to more than Momoko. Someone who stood her ground, who's kept believing in herself. Someone who willingly tossed certain success to the side because it wasn't what she believed in. If Momoko walks out on the group now, she'll never be her true self. And if that wasn't enough, her old bandmates don't believe that they chose the wrong path. They still want to prove to Momoko that the Diamond Dust they've become is a Diamond Dust they want to be a part of. But to hell with that! This is the ultimate declaration of war between these two bands. Momoko will persevere and so will Nina, as they raise their pinky fingers to Diamond Dust and everyone else who doesn't believe in them. After showing her true colors, after showing the true Momoko, Nina tells her what's been on her mind.
告白です
At least my family is accounted for. Please lend me your strength. This one last time.
There's no way I'd make this video without including Mushoku Tensei on the list. And really, there are too many episodes I thought about putting on here. I seriously considered putting either the episodes of Far, for its brutal depiction of trauma as Nanahoshi realizes she may never go back home, and for how beautifully it ends, as well as My Older Brother's feelings, which allowed Rudius and his sister Norn to finally reconcile as he saw how much she resembled his past self. I also consider the episode Let's Go Home, since I already made a video on it. Plus there's a season finale where we get to see Norn drop her diss track on her brother. Not like Melis, but come on. The only episode you're expecting me to put here was none other than the one released on Father's Day, Parents. And yes, this is the highest ranking episode that is primarily a fight, and a damn good one at that too. Like I mentioned earlier, with magic fights in anime oftentimes not being as exciting as you'd hope, giant monster fights suffer too. With the exception of Attack on Titan, most giant monster fights aren't as cool as you'd expect them to be, which I guess makes more sense than you'd think. How is a normal human or a group supposed to take down enemies several stories tall? But here it's fast, exciting, brutal, and both the Hydra's strengths and weaknesses could be shown, not told. I mean, it's a Hydra, we know how it's gonna go. The heads are gonna respawn and they're gonna have to burn the stumps, but they still need to figure out how to do that, and after much trial and error, things seem to be going their way. Of course, Rudy ends up losing his arm, but that's not the worst part of it. After the battle ends, Paul Greyrat has fallen. Now, I need to be completely honest here. I had Paul's death spoiled mere hours before this episode aired, and really, I can only blame myself. I wasn't getting much sleep the night before, so I just looked up random stuff about Mushoku Tensei. And yeah, I did it to myself. But that being said, Paul's death still hits hard. Especially when you consider that the last thing that he saw was his own son having defeated the Hydra, and Zenith was rescued. I'm sure while he couldn't speak in his final moment, he felt at peace knowing they accomplished exactly what they came to do. This isn't the end of the traumatic journey everyone's been a part of. Zenith, of course, is essentially a vegetable now. Rudy lost his arm. There's everything I talked about that happens in the following episode, but above all else, up to this point in the story, Rudy has never seen Paul as his father, even when he dies in front of him. But, as shown in the following episode, Rudy will move forward, not only seeing Paul as the man he was, but how he's become so much like him. Fire. It's perhaps humanity's most primal fear. Our entire lives were entranced by it, oftentimes gazing at its chaotic beauty. In the wrong hands, fire has been used to subjugate and torture, leaving nothing but ash behind. But it can also inspire. How many of the greatest inventions, innovations, and ideas occurred beside candlelight? Much like how a raging fire can annihilate a forest, serotinous pine cones can spread their seeds and create new forests because of it. The blazing inferno of damnation may be used to prevent the truth from being spread. However, as long as a spark of hope and imagination still lingers, the roaring light of truth is more easily set ablaze to those who seek it. Episode 3 of Orb on the Movements of the Earth is titled I believe in heliocentrism, which is uttered by the first and last time by the series' main character up to this point. Rafal was a child who had his entire life before him, one where he could study theology and live a carefree existence. But after a chance encounter with a man branded as a heretic, he's led to his own path, studying heliocentrism, which has been deemed heretical by the church. The same church that would stop at nothing to prevent its research, including executing children. Try as he might, he is powerless in front of the Twisted Inquisitor, Nowak, and he knows this. But in a defiant last stand after being given the opportunity to recant, he tears up his only path to his future, declaring to all that he does believe in heliocentrism. Before he can be tortured, he takes his own life in his hands, humbling Nowak for perhaps the first time in his life. As this story was never about Rafal in the first place. He's just another person who the orb in the title of the story has exchanged hands between. As long as the orb being the earth itself, exists, there are those who will seek to better understand and study it, which is something that no amount of Inquisitors can ever prevent. As the series continues, more will meet a similar fate to Rafal, but even more will become inspired and continue their own journey to unveil the truth. I'm sure we all knew that this was going to be on the list, and I'm surprised too that it isn't number 1. It's the anime episode I was looking forward to the most of this whole year, and what makes episode 7 of Dandadan, To a Kinder World, so impactful and unforgettable is that the story told here is one that you know has happened before. Sure, we're never given a name to the mother nor her daughter, but it's a change of art style so brutally yet beautifully depicts. For this part of the story, it's no longer about wild aliens hunting this guy's balls. This is meant to be realistic. There are potentially countless people out there who have been ripped apart much like the family here is, and they don't get a happy ending. They'll never see each other again. From this short backstory, we're able to discern all we need to know about who Acrobatic Silky was and why she became a yokai. And it's not like this episode blindsided us this hard. Shortly after the Turbo Granny fight, it's revealed she was protective of the tunnel because she was guarding the souls of young girls who were murdered. The yokai we meet are more mysterious and tragic than you'd otherwise think in an anime like this. And really, it probably should be the best episode of the year. It's perhaps the most devastating thing you'll watch from all of 2024. The storyboard and animation were directed by Shuto Inamoto, who worked on Heavenly Delusion, most notably being the key animator for what was probably my favorite anime episode from 2023. And then there's the music. Nearly the entire backstory is dialogue-free. Kensuke Ushio is one of my favorite composers in anime, and this episode is a perfect example why. There's only one problem I have with this episode, and that is immediately after the story hits the hardest emotional beats. We get that dancing cat again. Turbo Granny, I love you, but not right now. To a Kinder World will be many people's favorite episode of the year, and for good reason. However, there's one other anime that I believe should get the #1 spot, as it's truly something special. Surprise! #1 goes to what I've already claimed as being the best anime of the entire decade so far. And while I couldn't put it on the last list I made since I put it on 2023's list, I will make sure I don't miss on calling out what's the best episode of anime of 2024. However, which episode of The Dangers in My Heart do I choose? Really, I could have put the entire season 2 on this list and I'd still have to make some painful cuts. Each episode knows how to hit hard and hits hard. I could have gone with I'm Growing Up, as we get to see Anna's perspective and how she too has self-doubt. I Don't Want to Lose showcases one of Kyotaro's greatest triumphs. And I know many would consider Yamada Likes Me for giving us one of the best speeches I've ever seen in anime, which this year was a good year for great anime speeches, and being the culmination of some of the greatest character development you'll ever see for both Kyotaro and Anna. But there's only one episode that was ever going to top this list. The final episode of Season 2, We Fell in Love. The Dangers in My Heart is the most beautiful anime I've ever watched. There's so much beauty in its simplicity of these two cringy middle school kids growing up and realizing their feelings for one another. It's been 24 episodes leading up to this moment, both of them. And that's a major reason why this is my favorite anime episode of the year. I love a good confession in anime, but it's almost always from one person to the other, which is also the case here, since Anna just wasn't able to return her feelings when Kyotaro expressed his. We've known for a long time at this point how much these two love each other, and seeing both of them finally bring these feelings out and share them, it's everything we've been building up to. And I love how they confess too. Kyotaro Ichikawa is a troubled kid, one without much self-worth and deep anxiety, constantly worried about how he comes off to other people. But in the time that he's known Anna, he's come to like school, make friends, and even hang out with the girls. And it's not like he's relying on Anna, but it's because of her that he's come to see how beautiful the world is. Anna Yamada has her own doubts. She's terrified of one day becoming a burden to everyone around her. She's awkward, she's a bit of an airhead, but she's come to like who she is. And Kyo has become the most important person in her life. And guys, I'm sorry I have to bring this up because I'm sure I'm not the only one who's thought about it. But I do think that this has taken the best anime confession spot away from the previous top dog. That being Kaguya-sama Love is War. I love this anime, it's probably in my top 5. And the confession in season 3 is utter perfection. But let's be completely honest, guys, this has never happened before. The extent to which Miyuki Shirogane went to in order to confess to Kaguya Shinomiya is a bit outlandish. It's a fantasy, it's meant to be over the top, and it's fantastic. Here though, the confessions are much more realistic, and I truly believe that this is the greatest confession I've ever seen in anime, and it might be the greatest confession we'll ever get. Everything has led to this point, where the two can stand side by side with each other. This is easily one of the greatest episodes of anime I've ever seen, and my favorite of the series. But I've caught up to the manga since season 2 ended, and if and when we get a season 3, there will be at least one other episode that I think will be better than this. I won't give any details, but there's a chapter in the manga that is just built perfectly for being adapted to anime, which is why this episode is so important. And as the season ends with Kyotaro and Anna becoming a couple, this is just the beginning of their story. Love stories don't end when they get together. The manga and Kyotaro and Anna's lives are still going strong, and will continue to go strong, as this episode brings us one step closer to finding the perfect anime. Hey, thanks for watching. I remember last year how I mentioned that I didn't make a best episodes of 2023 video, but I was considering it, so I spent the entire year of 2024 making notes on episodes that I would like to shout out. I want to make this video a regular annual thing too. Just in the future, I'll try to have it come out earlier in the year than this video is. Sorry about that. If you enjoyed this video, then be sure to sub for more hearts. And now, it's finally time for me to move on to 2025 anime, as this season has been really good. I'm having a great time watching anime, and I can't wait to talk more about it with all of you. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.